Hello from Sydney, Australia, everyone. And just before we go to the episode, I wanted to quickly let you know that you can find a team diagnostic on our website, thegreatcoachespodcast.com. The diagnostic is called Thriving Teams, and it's built using insight into how the more than 200 great coaches we have interviewed go about developing the teams they lead. It's free, only takes a few minutes, and should help you identify areas you can work on to bring your team closer to thriving. Now, just a few words from our sponsors, and we'll begin the podcast.
Every idea starts with a problem. Warby Parker's was simple. Glasses are too expensive. So they set out to change that. By designing glasses in-house and selling directly to customers, they're able to offer prescription eyewear that's expertly crafted and unexpectedly affordable. Warby Parker glasses are made from premium materials like impact-resistant polycarbonate and custom acetate. And they start at just $95, including prescription lenses. Get glasses made from the good stuff. Stop by a Warby Parker store near you.
From small towns to big cities, Comcast is connecting millions of Americans to affordable, reliable, and secure Wi-Fi at prices that are clear and consistent with the new 5-year price guarantee. Backed by AI innovation, resilient design, and cybersecurity technology, the Comcast network is built to keep families and businesses connected and their data safe. Learn more about how Comcast is investing in a more connected America at ComcastCorporation.com/investment.
While every other channel is fighting for your customers' attention, podcasts are where they've already given it. No one accidentally listens to a podcast for 45 minutes. They choose to be here. They trust the voice in their ears. And when that voice talks about your brand, it doesn't sound like advertising. It sounds like a recommendation from a friend. Acast gives you that trust at scale. Digital precision, host-read authenticity, and performance data that proves it worked. Don't fight for attention. Buy it with Acast. Learn more by visiting acast.com/advertise.
Welcome to the Lessons from the Great Coaches podcast.
I've learned that you don't do it alone.
You learn so many different things from so many different coaches.
That's an elite learning environment.
Failure is not a problem. How you deal with it is a problem.
How to be resilient.
How important it is to infuse joy in the process of learning.
To be a good coach, you've got to give more than you take.
What an interesting life it is to be a leader.
Hello and welcome to the Great Coaches podcast. My name is Paul Barnett, and here on the podcast, we believe that there is no algorithm for leadership. And so we interview great sports coaches from around the world to try and find a couple of ideas to help us all be better leaders. Why sports coaches? Well, because we believe they possess the leadership skills that make a long-term impact on people's lives. Today's episode is on great teamwork, and I'm joined for the discussion by two great coaches. The first is Lisa Alexander. Lisa has been on the podcast multiple times before. She was the coach of the Australian Netball team known as the Diamonds from 2011 to 2020. And during that time, she oversaw gold medal successes at the 2014 Commonwealth Games and the 2015 Netball Cup, as well as silver medals at the 2018 Commonwealth Games and 2019 Netball World Cup. And the second great coach is John Kessel. John has also been on the podcast multiple times before, and he was the team leader for the 2000 USA Olympic beach volleyball team in Sydney, which brought home 1 gold medal, and for the 2004 USA Paralympic women's sitting volleyball team in Athens, which came home with the bronze medal. He's the author of 12 books, including the Impact Coaching Manual, which is now in its 33rd edition. In 2024, he was inducted into the Volleyball Hall of Fame, and today travels around the world talking about coaching, particularly in the youth space. And just before we go to the interview, today's podcast is brought to you by the Macquarie University Business School's MBA program. Designed to empower, challenge and transform, the Macquarie MBA gives you the business skills and knowledge you need to succeed in an evolving global economy. To find out more, search for Macquarie University Business School's MBA. And now, please enjoy our episode on great teamwork.
Leadership insights from the best. Welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast.
Well, good morning and welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast. I have two great coaches with me here today. The first of them is Lisa Alexander. Lisa, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm well, and it's raining, so that's good for our vegetables here.
Where are you, Lisa? We should start with that. Where are you in the world?
In Avoca in Victoria, country Victoria. It's a temperate climate, but we need some rain.
Well, temperate climate, yes, it indeed. It's about 4 hours up the road from where I am in Melbourne. But our other guest is on the other side of the world. Good afternoon to you, Mr. John Kessel.
And good afternoon to the two of you. And we just had one of our monsoon rains, which we always love here in Colorado, where, we have 4,000 meter peaks and stuff just outside my door. And beauty of rain for everybody, is something that I think we all can appreciate regardless of where we are.
That is very true. I am looking forward to chatting with you both today. It's a bit of I think it's a black box topic, great teamwork. I get asked about it a lot from people when I talk to them about the podcast. They're always keen to understand what I've learned about this topic and whether there's anything they can apply in their own lives. So I'm looking forward to jumping into it with you both today. And I thought, Lisa, I could maybe start with you and just simply asking you, what is great teamwork?
Oh, golly, that is the question, isn't it? I always think netball as a sport is one of the sports that displays true teamwork in essence, because we have positions where people can't go to other positions on the court. So there's an offside. So it really does rely on, one player passing to the other. One player can't necessarily dominate the game. And everyone has a role to play within that team work. So from my point of view, when I watch a netball game in its truest sense, I see teamwork. I see people supporting other people on the court. I see connection and great rhythm, and also people putting out their most vigorous activity at the very top level, but having others around them to support that too. It's beauty in movement, I often think. It's almost like a dance. And for me, that's where I see the truest sense of teamwork.
I love this idea of beauty in movement. John, can I ask you what great teamwork means? And I guess the context also is that you're just back from India, where you're looking at teamwork in probably a different sense than what it is and can mean in the US.
Yeah, it's an incredibly important word in sport, but also in life. And I think that's where some of that root black box stuff that you're talking about, Paul, is, comes from. It's that whole coach's job is to teach the whole person and not just the skill per se, but the whole person. And in doing so, you're guiding them to be a better human in the human race and in the generally populous places. 1.5 billion in India is, a pretty populated place, of cooperating and getting along and supporting one another. And I think in my sport, not unlikely, you rotate, and so you play different positions around the court. But the first thing that came to mind was how Karch, our Olympic gold medal coach, and a player that won 3 gold medals, both as a beach and an indoor player, pretty talented guy. He cut from the national team the best player physically that we had, because the principle that we have in volleyball is that you celebrate the successes of your teammates more than your own. And this athlete was so selfish, she couldn't do that. And Coach just said, that's how we roll. That's how this sport and that's how our team is going to be. And, maybe you should go into beach volleyball where there's only one teammate. and the teamwork is still teamwork with that one teammate, but not the same as Lisa and I are dealing with 5 to 6 on the field of play per team against a group that's fighting to beat you just as badly with their team. I look at that huge picture of what teamness is, I think, that sport can teach. And that's the reason that we are introducing these projects in India, in no small part because they are looking at the 2036 Olympics, just like you guys are, 4 years out now, or 6 years out from the Brisbane Olympics in 2032. So you've got these opportunities to help your multitude of sports that might not be popular in Australia or an Olympic sport and still grow, because you probably have a team handball team that'll be in the Olympics and you may not have a team. So you've got this unique opportunity to develop teammate and team systems through sport because you're the host country.
John, you talked a little bit about Karch there. One of my on my dream list to interview at some point. But Lisa, Karch is obviously a great volleyball coach. But what do you think the best leaders do to unlock teamwork?
Well, I think what they need to do is to create the environment for that great teamwork to occur. And it has to be done in a way that's strategic as well as organic. So it's both. You have to work on, obviously, what we used to call it in our program was the mechanics of the teamwork. So the training cycles, the work that had to be done on court, the technical work that we needed to do to get the team to a certain level. But then we also had to work on what we called the dynamics of the team. So that was the development of teamness, the idea of it's a bigger picture, it's we before me, and then also the idea of having conversations that weren't about necessarily netball, but were bigger than netball. So the human side, as John was referring to earlier. So developing that side of the connection with the athletes was critically important to our success. Hence, we had our culture building days. We came up with our trademarks for the team, Sisters in Arms, which clearly gave the team that bigger purpose that they were working towards. And when you're a high-performing team that has to work under pressure, those relationships have to be really strong together. So that's what we worked on in a way that made sure we provided time for that to happen within our program, because you can be very focused on just the technical side and not put enough effort into growing the other side, the people side, the connection side, that could mean the difference between a pass not getting through or a defensive call not being responded to, because sometimes those things can become innate to the combination that you've created because of those extra organic conversations and being together as a group and a team.
And John, I know that you introduced me to Doug Beale, and he tells this wonderful story to illustrate Lisa's point about taking that gold medal team out into the woods and getting them to survive. Yeah.
Well, not just the woods, Paul. It was the winter outward bound course. So he raised it up from the traditional level of either rafting on an outward bound course or being in the summer. He went one more notch higher and did a winter outward bound course for 28 days with that 84 team. Yeah.
It seems to me that, having had the good fortune to interview many great volleyball coaches, and a lot of them have come from the US, a lot of them talk about this idea of trust being the currency that makes high-performing teams work. I must have heard 4 or 5 of your peers use that exact phrase. But when you hear Lisa talk, do you think there's anything that you've seen that's different to that?
Well, 2 things pop to mind. One is the incredible value of trust. I mean, you can collaborate and communicate, but if there's no trust, those things are going to not be too successful. And so you must be trustworthy as their leader. And that's incredibly important, which includes things like being reliable. And I think the one that doesn't get picked up on a lot in being a teammate is adaptability. The world and everything we do has a ton of variability. And for me, it resonates to be adaptable and have this capability to deal with the ups and downs of life without being Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde as a teammate, but to be consistent, and especially, again, as a leader. The other thing that came to mind, I thought, was the gender difference. And I don't know, that may be a question you had later, but, I've seen the men's netball program out of India, and yet I haven't seen the women's netball program. Is, world champ and superstars and stuff with their women's team. And I have no idea. I've never seen a netball team of men. And where I'm coming from is that whole thing of raising kids that are of both genders and their differences. And I'm going to say this and may get picked on by the highest elite athletes who say, no, there's no difference between us. But I know that in my experience with my family, my life, the kids I coach, and Kathy DeBoer, who would probably be an interesting interview, she wrote a book on gender difference in sports, and it triggered in me this line that we use a lot, that men battle to bond and women bond to battle. And that came from her, and I've always looked at that when I see women coaching men, or more often is the case, men coaching or working with women. And the biologist in me, Paul, and these women are incredibly more important than men. Flat out fact. Because 100 men and 1 woman, or 100 males and 1 female in any species, and the species is probably gone. But 100 females and 1 male in the species will survive. And yeah, we're the hunter-gatherers and not quite so good maybe at being a good teammate. But to survive, the females have to survive and protect each other and be a unique and powerful team genetically almost, in order for the species to go on. Maybe I'm at 30,000 feet. I don't know. I look at my daughter, though, and my son, and I think that's why I'm reflecting on this for your listeners. If Cody saw a job posting with 10 things that he needed to do, and he only could do 2, he would look at me and go, I got this. I'm going to get this job, Dad. And if my daughter saw the same 10 things in a job posting that she was interested in, or not the same things, but 10 things, and she could do 7 of them, she would go, nah, I'm not going to apply. I'm not ready to apply. I'm not good enough yet. And that's in my experience, primarily gender. Not that the bell curve and the variance of life doesn't have amazing people that are incredibly aggressive and probably, I've only got 1 trait, says a gal, and I'm going to apply. And vice versa, maybe Cody would have been one who didn't apply, even though he could do 8 of the things. But I look at that when I think of being a head coach or a boss, and that I need to bond my team to battle if I'm primarily with women, and be comfortable with the fact that my guys are going to fight and scream at each other, and then through that, they're bonding. So, enough said. I want to hear more about netball and what she's thinking.
Oh, I think Lisa will definitely have a view on this. I know that she's been spoken about it in the press many times. Lisa, do you want to respond before I bring in a video?
Yeah, look, that's definitely has been my experience too as a teacher. In general, I would find that if I took male classes in physical education, I used to take advanced phys ed classes. What they would need from me was to know that I was the boss straight up and that I knew what I was doing, and then they would calm down and get on with what it was that they were doing. Of course, the battle part is an essence of that as well, but I still seek as a leader to teach people and not necessarily with a gender focus. And so the same with the netballers. I don't see them necessarily as women, I see them as people. So my coaching is centered around coaching the individual, of course, but also then combining those individuals into a team, which I think takes bonding as well as battling at different times. And it depends. Sometimes I find that the women in teams tend to go too much into the bonding time and too much into the talking and not wanting to be honest in their conversations, which can get a breakthrough, which creates something really great down the track. And whereas if I was with a group of guys in that regard, I would get to that point more quickly, I think. That would be my generalisation of working with men and women. What we were always trying to create, though, was that environment where we would get the trust to the highest level we possibly could get, and then we could have those genuine conversations where people could be, what I would say, very blunt with each other because they had to be in a high-pressure situation, not for that to fall into a chasm of, oh, you don't like me or whatever, an emotional response. So that's what we were always working towards, that high performance out there without the emotional reaction around it, especially in those conversations when we needed to have very honest conversations about, you need to step up. For example, wing attack, goal attack, you need to step up here. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. And it could all be done very efficiently and quickly, and then we could debrief it later on. So that's what you're trying to get towards. There's enough trust, there's enough honest communication between you, and there's an understanding that that's for a particular purpose that you're trying to achieve in your team. And what I find, though, is women probably need a little bit more debriefing about those sort of things. Although some of the young fellows that I'm dealing with these days, I would find they also need debriefing and a little bit more care and attention and discussion about things. Probably because there's a different parenting style going on as well with guys and girls at the moment.
I think this idea of honest communication around standards, it comes up time and time again in the interviews I have, and the ability to have an honest conversation around that. I agree with you, Lisa. It's something I see in the workplace too. Teaching people. I interviewed Rodney Eade, who you'll know, Lisa. John, he's a successful Australian rules football coach who unfortunately has never won a championship. But he talked about having to teach people the art of giving and receiving feedback before you could even get into any kind of cultural work. And it was just a skill that people are losing as we move along through society. But John, what I'd like to do next
in the social media, Paul, the other thing I'm thinking to follow up what you're saying is that in social media, there's that story of, I told it when I was in India, that what does it take to build this place? And the answer is, my God, it takes years. It takes architects with great education. It takes electricians. It takes all these talented, skilled craftsmen and everything going on. And what would it take to tear it down? The answer that you see so often in social media is somebody without even a high school degree and maybe 2 hours or, a bulldozer for 2 days, and you can rip everything down that took years to build. And so I fully agree with both Lisa's honest communication and work and that coach that said, hey, I'm having to kind of guide their discovery on how feedback works so that you can be a better teammate and talk honest.
What I'm going to do now is I'd like to introduce the voice of a third coach, if I could. And the video I'm going to play before I ask the question comes from a gentleman called Gary Kirsten. Gary was a cricket coach, but he coached India to the World Cup. He's quite famous in India, and he's very eloquent. I want to play the clip, and then I'm going to ask you both a question.
I think what really changed for us with the Indian team was we shifted our behaviors. We sat together as a group of people one day and we said, okay, the Australians are arriving here. They're the number one test team in the world. Do we think that we could become the best cricket team in the world? And when we looked around the room and we looked at each other as individuals, there was enough skill and ability in the room to say, there's no reason why we can't be the number one test team in the world. And then we said, well, that's great because a lot of people can do that. But you can do that, the Indian team, because you have enough skill in the room to match the skill that's arriving on these shores in a few weeks' time. But things need to fundamentally change in this environment for that to happen. And we started to articulate what were the things that would need to shift that would allow us to start building out a process to reaching our abilities as a group of people with the skill that sat in the room. And we realized that there was actually a lot of tangible stuff that we could shift, the way we practiced, the way we spoke to each other, the way we took responsibility for things that weren't necessarily our primary role within the team. We started to talk about the name on the front of the shirt, not the name on the back of the shirt, as more relevant to the individuals. So there was some really kind of stuff you could hold on to. And we wrote this all down, and it was brilliant because as the players are writing it down and co-creating what they thought was the way forward for us as a group of people, it afforded me the opportunity then to have some words that I could use for the next 3 years that just became daily words into the team environment. So what did we do? We built a value system around how we wanted to live every day of our lives in the Indian team. And that was around consistency in behaviors. And then we went and acted out on that every single day.
So Gary Kirsten, obviously very successful coach, and he's giving this example from India. And it just prompted me to ask you both, and again, if I could start with you, Lisa, is what role does the leader play when you're establishing a team identity like that? Is it one where they should be stepping forward, taking control? Should they be stepping back? Is it a balance of each? And I'd like to get your reaction to that.
Taking care of your eyes shouldn't be a hassle. That's why Warby Parker is a one-stop shop for all your vision needs. Our prescription glasses and sunglasses are expertly crafted and unexpectedly affordable. Stop by a nearby store or use our app to virtually try on frames and get personalized recommendations. Did we mention we offer eye exams and take vision insurance too? For everything you need to see, head to your nearest Warby Parker store or visit warbyparker.com today. That's warbyparker.com.
We see you, the one behind the camera, making sure the moments that matter get remembered. Shutterfly turns your memories into something that lasts, like photo books that tell your travel stories, photo blankets that feature your favorite cuddle buddies, or a canvas print that brings you back to the moment you said, I do. Big moments or everyday ones, Shutterfly makes it easy to keep them close.
Make something that means something. Shutterfly.
Well, it's very interesting that Gary went through that process because you would definitely have to do that in India for so many different reasons, but particularly, historic caste system reasons and also, just the sense in cricket that they were a bunch of individuals. So he certainly created a team with that Indian team, and they've gone on to great success as well. So I applaud him for the work that he did, and it certainly made a huge difference. I was going to say to John, the interesting thing in India is also that you met the male netball team when in fact they don't necessarily support the women's netball team. They are starting to do that now, but back in 2010 when Delhi had the Commonwealth Games, they actually wanted to put a men's team in at the time. There's still a bit of a way to go there with equality around men and women accessing sport, but it's improving so much. I've observed that definitely over the last 10 years. But it's not surprising to hear that Gary talked about the fact that they had to co-create that list of behaviours that he felt would make a huge difference to the mindset of the team for playing for India rather than playing for their name on the back of the shirt, which is their own. And I think the leader has a lot to do with that. It's a strategic way of culture change if it's needed. And it's a way of the leader imprinting their values into how they're going to operate as a leader as well. I felt that I needed to access, particularly with the Diamonds when I took them over, there needed to be some culture change. We'd become a little bit selfish and a little bit self-entitled. And, you know, there were cliques in the team and the squad, and it was a bit of a pecking order. So that needed to be addressed. And so I had to become part of that, though. I couldn't necessarily lead it. I did get Ray McLean from Leading Teams to come in, who was a friend of mine, to help facilitate that journey. And we too came up with our list of, behaviours that were created and a trademark, but the players created that. And so it was the same idea. We could carry that language through all of the test matches that we had to do, the trainings, whatever it was, and very much based on reviewing, so learning, committing, doing, and then reviewing. And so it was that consistent process that we used all the time, and that developed from our culture work at the beginning. So from my point of view, the leader needs to embrace it and needs to be a part of it. And so that's why we had our own support staff trademark as well, so the players could see that we were working on being the best support team and coaches that we possibly could. So we did things together, but we also did things where they could see that we were working on our own little area of supporting them to be the best that they could possibly be. And when you've got that level of transparency and consistency that John mentioned earlier, then you've got the ability to have some fantastic performances, to grow leaders within your team, and to grow people that are thinking about the bigger picture together.
And John, your view?
Well, I mean, I almost wanted to say, hey, we're done. I don't need to add anything. What they said is great. But I think what I hope people hear the behavior side with a focus in either your work world and or your sport specific as to what is in your control. And, that's those behaviors that are in your control are the ones that you want to bring out and make totally clear. In my sport, there's only one skill in my control, and that's serving. Everything else is the chaos of the game and the teamness of the game. But my attitude and my effort and my communication, and what I say to you, you jerk, is in my control. I don't have to say you jerk. So those behaviors that they both spoke of are really important. I think the other thing that Lisa was going towards is to clarify roles. When you have a team or a large company, the more you can clarify roles, the better the substitutes are going to have as their role. And I think Karch was the first one to do this for us, as I recall, but we stopped calling our teammates that are on the bench substitutes, and we made it both behaviorally and role-based even clearer by calling them game changers. That I'm going to be bringing you in from the bench to change the game, not you're a substitute. And that alone, I think, puts a lot of sports teams, at least of coaches who might be listening, into a different kind of behavior and a more clarified role. I think that that's really important. The other thing I was thinking about when we talk about behaviors and roles or whatever, it is the joy of having mixed personalities and embracing everybody's uniqueness that way, because you're going to have the introverts and the extroverts, even at the highest performing level, and you're going to have, just different personalities. And as a leader, learning about the person again, we brought out, by having him group out on the stage in India, how long they've been teaching. And we had people that were in this course that had never taught PE yet. And then we had people that had taught for 20 years. And once you learn about them and over time more their personalities, then you can form this much stronger cohesive unit that makes a difference within what they can control in sport as well as in work.
Could I take you both from this idea of the leader and this top-down sort of view on how we're going to behave to talking about standards? And I'm going to play a video before I ask the question, but the context is this. I'm a business person. I'm a CEO. I'm not from your world. And I find the way that great coaches talk about standards to be very challenging. They talk about the standards you walk past are the ones you accept. And they seem to be constantly on guard about these standards. And I find this very difficult to do as a CEO. But I'm going to first play the video from an American football coach called Mike Blomgren. And then I'm going to come back to you both with the question.
Yeah, I think competition, growth, and love. Like if you put it in those three buckets, because I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think they have a direct impact on what happens on game day. And so with that belief, I think as much as we can compete and make iron sharpen iron, as much as we can grow and identify the things and not be in our own feelings, not have our feelings hurt when we're corrected by a teammate or by a coach, or certainly like if we're not meeting a standard, being able to take in that feedback and realize, yes, I was not meeting that standard, and understanding standard's not a goal. It's the bare minimum acceptable. And then I can grow. And then the whole time with both of those, competition and growth going on, knowing that I am loved by this organization. Like they value me for my play, and they value me for more than that. All the contributions I make, and they care. And so I think that's really big. I think like at my core, if you ask me the mission statement of Rice football, I'd say play great football and graduate with a world-class degree. And like, don't let anything get in the way of those two things. But I think we've all been on those teams. I think when we see magic happening, it's when a guy cares more about the guy in the locker next to him's success than he does his own. And that's when those are fun to be a part of. You can do some really special things.
It's such a great clip. It's 1:18 and it sums up so many of the things that I hear. But the standards I find difficult, because this description of not walking past them, if I took that and I applied that to my day every day, I'd be constantly calling things out. And I worry that through constantly calling things out, your voice ends up getting tuned out. So I'd revert to sort of making choices each day. And I find that tiring. But I'd like to ask you both how standards, the application, the construction of them, the thinking and talking about them, how they've played a role in the great teamwork that you've seen happen. And maybe, Lisa, if I could start with you and then go to John.
Oh, well, no doubt in the history and culture of the Australian netball team, the Diamonds has been built on a history of excellence. So it's a nod to the past as well. And it's that, I guess, embedding of that understanding of how we've got to that position as a country in netball. And there is an understanding of that. There's a DNA that comes to that. You're the best of the best. And when you come into that, the Australian Institute of Sport court where you train and you break bones, you bleed, you sweat, you understand it together, and that the standards have sort of been imprinted in the minds of those players any case beforehand. What I find different about workplace versus team is that in sport, it's much easier for leaders to inculcate that idea of team first, and that you sacrifice yourself and you put your teammate first, because you know that it will lead to the ultimate success of the team doing and winning. In business, it's very different. Your reward system is different. And that makes it difficult to have people working together as teams. If the value of the person's work is not really linked to a team goal, then it's difficult to then implement a standard system. Like it's not reaching to the high standard, it's getting to the low. It's just a tick the box situation. So it is much more difficult, I think, in the workplace to do that. Whereas in a team where you discuss those standards of what you don't want to walk past, and you have a culture and you have a trademark and you have behaviours that you work towards, everybody knows collectively what we need to be doing. And that's the sort of, I guess, leadership mindset I had with the Diamonds, is it wasn't just my responsibility to pick up when someone wasn't doing right, because that might interfere with my ability to coach that player. It was often very, very powerful if one of their teammates or even the captain talked to that player and said, Nat or Kim, that wasn't acceptable, and this is the way we need to do that, and have a discussion about it. For me, that became a much more powerful form of behaviour management within the whole group and the team. And that's what I'm saying. It's a difficult thing in a workplace because your reward system is different.
Very true.
AI is transforming customer service. It's real and it works. And with Finn, we've built the #1 AI agent for customer service. We're seeing lots of cases where it's solving up to 90% of real queries for real businesses. This includes the real-world complex stuff like issuing a refund or cancelling an order. And we also see it when Finn goes up against competitors. It's top of all the performance benchmarks, top of the G2 leaderboard, and if you're not happy, we'll refund you up to $1 million, which I think says it all. Check it out for yourself at fin.ai.
Every idea starts with a problem. Warby Parker's was simple. Glasses are too expensive. So they set out to change that. By designing glasses in-house and selling directly to customers, they're able to offer prescription eyewear that's expertly crafted and unexpectedly affordable. Warby Parker glasses are made from premium materials like impact-resistant polycarbonate and custom acetate. And they start at just $95, including prescription lenses. Get glasses made from the good stuff. Stop by a Warby Parker store near you.
John, your view on standards and their application?
Well, I think the companies I've worked with appreciate what Lisa was saying about history, even to the level of it's kind of in their DNA. And I've worked with some pretty big ones. And at the same time, I think I've found that when a company and a team has shared purpose, that allows for some of the other things you're being challenged by, Paul, to ameliorate or to be addressed and worked on almost more in a teammate way, because, we're sharing this purpose. I also think there's this sort of idea, and there's two things that come to mind about both being a good leader and being a good teammate. And one of those is the John Wooden story that I think I may have already told here on the podcast, but in short form, the amazing consistency that he shared with his teams over time. That, as I addressed earlier, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde wasn't part of it. But when I think in the workplace, it's been my experience that there's not enough catching me being good and too much paying attention to me only when I fail or when I make a mistake. And I find that in the gym, a coach normally turns on their radar, crosses their arms, and then watches the play. And then around the world, when coach comes up to you, why are they coming up to you? Usually still with their arms crossed. And the kids around the world say, because I did something wrong. And I go, yeah, and I'm here to help. And I say something, and then all of a sudden I see another mistake, and then I see another mistake. And those coaches spend their energy running around the gym, giving kids attention only when they err. And I'd like to flip it on its back into the, at least in the motor skill research, we know that summary feedback is a faster way to achieve skill. And therefore, if I see 4 wrong and 1 right, I'm going to address the wrong. But if I'm seeing 2 wrong and 3 right, I want to catch them being good. And I don't know if we do that enough in the business world.
I think that's a very good challenge. I'm going to reflect on that as I fly home today from Melbourne. Perhaps if I could just finish with one final question. It's a personal one. I'd like to ask you both what the impact that being part of teams has had on your life. Maybe this time if I could start with you, John, and then finish with Lisa.
Yeah, I mean, I did a ton of sports, both individually, golf, varsity, as well as doubles volleyball versus the 6-on-6 side of things. But I also played ice hockey, which is a rather fast-moving team sport. And I think when I look back on it, it simply is, I'm in my 70s and I look back and it's the friendships that I developed through the team sports that are the strongest. Certainly I can have friendships if I'd become a tennis player or a golfer, but I think the amount of team sports I did allowed me to have some amazing friendships that are still going on to this day. And when you look back in sport, both through coaching and through being a player, they reflect not so much on the wins and the losses, but on the stories and the laughter and the experience. And remember when you came and my sister had broken an arm and you did this for her, even though you didn't know her, you just knew that I said my sister broke her arm. And that again, that people side, that person side, male or female, that is part of being a whole human. And I think when I sit back at this day and time, it's that humanness and that experience of that, like the Chinese proverb, winning and losing are temporary, but friendships last forever. And, I truly believe that by having my athletes go seek out the best players on another team and not consider them an enemy, but another shared, passionate person of the sport that we have, that the rising tide lifting all boats, we are all getting better at volleyball and raising the level. And yeah, there's going to be some Olympians that come out of it. But I know that when they're young, you can really damage them. That principle of you can't make an Olympic volleyball player at the age of 12. They're not going to exist, but you can certainly ruin them. And so that's probably why, Paul, I'd love for you to think about catching them being good a little bit more.
I'm going to reflect on that, John. Lisa, could I ask you just what the impact of being in teams has had on your life?
Oh, it's had an impact on me from the point of view of connecting with community, particularly for me in Australia, having, when I was quite young, with my family to another community. It just helped me connect straight away with that community and feel great support. And immediately, you find your tribe, I call it. And it was funny, my friend who I signed up to university on the same day, Kerry Lightfoot, she lives just down the road in Ballarat, and we both travelled together and had that opportunity to chat along the way. Both of us talked about how important all the teams and all the coaching had been in our life, for our personal life, for our family, for our, I played in teams with my daughter as well. So it was that connection to the community that I found the most strength and value in.
I think connection to community and catching people being good is a good place for us to finish. Thank you both so much for your time today. It was great to get you both together for this conversation. So many great insights that I look forward to sharing with the broader audience. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and get a good night's sleep, John.
Yeah. About to drop off. Hi everyone, you have been listening to the great coaches Lisa Alexander and John Kessel talk about great teamwork. I hope you enjoyed it and found a couple of ideas that you can bring back to your own team to help them improve their teamwork. When I listened back, some of the highlights for me were Lisa's description of building teamwork through both a focus on the dynamics and mechanics of the people involved, and how this is underpinned with good conversations that lead to improved connection and ultimately a sense of shared team identity, which in her case she described as the sisters in arms. It leads me to the question of, how do you describe great teamwork? And John's idea of trying to catch people being good, and how his experience in the corporate world and as a great coach has taught him that this doesn't happen enough in the workplace. Which led me to the question of, how often do I catch people doing good versus calling out areas for improvement? I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and if those questions are helpful for you, I will put them in the show notes. And just before we go, if you have any feedback, then please let us know. Just like Joel Curtis, who after listening to our discussion with Com Nally said, I really enjoyed the discussion with Colm. Athletes are people first and performers second. Thanks, Joel. We love the interaction with the people around the world who listen. And so if you have any feedback or comments, please let us know. In fact, if we could ask anything of you, it would be to forward this episode onto one person in your network who is interested in developing the teamwork of their team. But if you do have any feedback and would like to contact us, all the details are in the show notes or on our website, thegreatcoachespodcast.com.
While every other channel is fighting for your customers' attention, podcasts are where they've already given it. No one accidentally listens to a podcast for 45 minutes. They choose to be here. They trust the voice in their ears, and when that voice talks about your brand, it doesn't sound like advertising. It sounds like a recommendation from a friend. Acast gives you that trust at scale. Digital precision, host-read authenticity, and performance data that proves it worked. Don't fight for attention. Buy it with Acast. Learn more by visiting acast.com/advertise.